Hi, I'm Maggie. Welcome to Experiments in Crafting. Tonight we're going to be talking about some of the things that I saw at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, and then a few things that I picked up earlier from Yarn Bee at Hobby Lobby. So Wisconsin Sheep and Wool is a fiber festival in sort of its truest sense. So sometimes what I go to that I call fiber festivals are really yarn shows. Stitches is really a yarn show, as is YarnCon. They primarily are people who have died and are selling yarn. Wisconsin Sheep and Wool's a little bit different. It's a fiber festival where people bring sheep and they compete and show sheep. They have shearing demonstrations. They have dyeing demonstrations. There's spinning and knitting and all sorts of things. In that, there's also people vending wool. And in this case, a lot of times you'll find people who are vending wool that they hand spun or had spun from their own sheep, and then they dyed it up themselves or sent it out for dyeing. But it's a little bit different. So when you're looking online for various shows to attend, or if you're going to try and go to a festival, there's sort of those two different categories. There's true fiber festivals where it's focused around a particular animal. In the case of Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, it's primarily sheep and then some alpaca and various others. But a couple years ago, we went to an alpaca show, and you can see video footage from that on the channel. But that just happened to be in our area, and we just decided to go. It was a horrible day for going anywhere. It was like snowing like crazy, but it ended up being a lot of fun, and we just kind of wandered around and looked at alpacas and shopped for some yarn. And so each fiber festival that I've been to is slightly different in that regard. So YarnCon is primarily like indie dyers. It's small vendors. It's usually one or two people who like own their own little company where they dye up yarn. By comparison, Stitches Midwest in Schaumburg tends to be bigger companies. They often there's indie dyers, but then there's bigger companies that there's super big companies like Clover and Webbs, who owns yarn.com, where they sell just massive amounts of yarn. But then there's also like, I don't know, I guess I would say medium-sized companies that actually like produce yarn and have multiple employees and are a bigger deal than just a smaller indie dyed not bigger deal, but bigger operation than a small indie dyed facility. And then, like I said, then there's things like Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, where it's kind of a different flavor to it. It's more rustic, I guess. There's a lot more raw fiber available, or just dyed fibers that are ready for spinning. But you can just like, there's just bunches of people who are just like, they sheared their sheep earlier this week and now they've, dropped it off for processing too. So there's kind of a whole variety of things going on there. So with all that being said, I'm going to sort of get into some of the yarns that I picked up from Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, and then I'll show you some of the stuff that I picked up from Hobby Lobby. Sorry. Lost my train of thought there. So this is a company that I found last year and really, really fell in love with the way that they do their yarn. I ended up making the shawl for my wedding out of this yarn. The cool thing about the way this company does things is they make gradient yarns, and then you can buy either end color. So this is the Rouge Violet Cerulean colorway. Some other colorways have names. Others are just like, here's the three colors that are in them. So this is the Rouge Violet Cerulean color. And then I bought a cerulean end. So you could buy either a cerulean end or a rouge end, but you couldn't buy a violet like to coordinate. So they're kind of set up, and you can see there's a video on my Instagram page, and I think it's also shared to Facebook. But if you look at the video, you can see that they're laid out such that you can buy this yarn, and then the two ends are like hung right below it. And then they have the next gradient with its two ends, the next gradient with its two ends. And so it's really kind of a cool way to lay things out. And it allows you to expand a gradient without having to buy a much larger gradient. Yarns that when they're dyed like this tend to be very expensive, and they get more expensive as you get into bigger and bigger gradients, just because they're really hard for an indie dyer to produce. So, I don't know. This is, I don't remember if I said the name, but this is Fiber Optic Yarns, and this is one of their like big, one of their big like product lines is their unified gradients and then the ends for each piece. So, and then additionally, I picked up a skein of their Heaven Worsted. They had a really beautiful shawl worked up in the Heaven Worsted. Just looked really nice. And so I don't work with a ton of worsted weight, but I thought that this would make a nice cowl or maybe a nice hat. I had a really nice winter hat that I liked, and I shrunk it pretty badly. It got left in a pocket of one of my jackets, and I washed and dried it, and it was 100% alpaca, and it was not meant to be washed and dried. So it shrunk to not as badly as the one that I made for my sister, which coincidentally was also 100% alpaca. She did basically a similar thing. It was tucked in with her jacket, and threw it all in the wash and just missed it, and it shrunk like to a preemie sized hat. But mine shrunk to where it's like a little bit too small and looks a little bit awkward on my head. So kind of just scrolling through, mostly just people saying hello, and just saying somebody said they finally caught us. Great. I'm really glad that you guys are all here. And hello to all of you who are watching and not commenting. Feel free to say hello to each other in the chat or ask questions. I will keep an eye on the chat as the stream goes on so I can answer any questions that you guys might have. So that's Fiber Optic Yarns. Next thing that I picked up was from Northern Bee Studios. I think I've shown you guys some stuff from Northern Bee in the past. I think I bought from Northern Bee when I was at Stitches just a few weeks ago, but this is something that either they didn't have when I was at Stitches, or I just didn't see it and really liked it this time. So this is going to work up as a variegated yarn, and it's got sort of a gray charcoal end. There's some, well, it's not an end, I should say. It's a gray charcoal portion, because if I opened this up, it's going to be a bit of charcoal, a bit of this like iridescent green, a bit of the purple, and then a pretty big chunk of this magenta color. So you can sort of see there's all the colors, the various different colors in there. But I don't know, I thought it was something kind of pretty, and probably was destined to just be a 100-gram fingering weight shawl. This is, again, Northern Bee Studio, and the color on this is called Siren. Let's see, what else did I get? So a few weeks ago, I shared that I had backed a Kickstarter and bought a Electric Eel Nano, which is a very small spinning wheel, about yay big. And I'm going to try and spin some stuff. And while I was there, there was just so much fiber available, but one of the booths in particular stuck out, and that is Hidden Valley Farm and Woolen Mill. So they're a fiber mill. It's somewhere, if you owned animals, you could send fiber to be processed and dyed and all that, but then they also were there vending as well. And so my hope here is that I'm going to be able to spin some of this into some sort of yarn. Um, but we'll see. My spinning is not great. There was another vendor there. Hook and Shuttle was the name of the vendor, and they had a whole bunch of different things going on. They had some looms set up, some for weaving, and then they also had some electric spinning wheels, both the Electric Eel Nano, and another one that was a little bit like larger, more robust version from another company. And so I sat for a little bit, and they worked with me and showed me just some like really basic spinning technique. Very, very friendly people, and they offered to come to me and do lessons, like paid lessons. And it was just a really nice offer because we're in central Illinois and they're located in Wisconsin, and like they didn't even seem to like mind the drive, or meet halfway at a coffee shop or something like that. So it was a really nice place, and they had a interesting offer. So it was called Hook and Shuttle. This is from Hidden Valley Farm and Woolen Mill. They had I think both have a Facebook, but I don't know if either of them had a Instagram, so they probably didn't get tagged. But if you check out like the Instagram post or my Facebook, there should be links to each of the vendors, but not like the specific yarns. So you should be able to find them and find their websites that way too. And my husband's working on getting links down in the description of the live stream. So that's it for fiber from the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool, but I also picked up a shawl pin. This is a noteworthy pin from Crafty Flutterby. Crafty Flutterby Creations. I'm going to pull this out of here because the bag's reflecting the light poorly and you can not really see it. But this pin had kind of a cool coppery bronze look about it, and then a sort of neat like pearl set in the center. It's a 2-piece pin, so it's got like a stick and then a part that goes on the outside as like decoration. So to wear this, you'd put it over a shawl and then run the stick through the back like so. And then it would just hold it in place. So I really like wearing shawls. I wear a lot of shawls, and I have various pins, but I've wanted one like this for a while. I've actually really wanted to make shawl pins like this, but I just don't really have the skill set. Like, I haven't really gotten into metal working in any real fashion. So I went ahead and bought this one. And again, that one's from Crafty Flutterby Creation. So that's all I picked up at Wisconsin Sheep and Wool. So if you've got any questions about anything that you see here, please go ahead and ask those. It's a pretty good size show, but I'd been to Stitches recently, and so I just kind of limited myself to just getting a few things. And yeah, so this is what I picked up this time. I've got a comment I'm going to read real quick. Okay, so somebody's just thanking me for the video tutorials on using Ravelry and just the skill set that they picked up from being able to search and look up yarns. So that's great. I'm really glad that you enjoyed those videos. If you have more questions about specific Ravelry topics, and that's to anybody, if you have specific questions about that, I'd be happy to maybe focus another live stream on the Ravelry aspect, like the Ravelry tutorials, I guess is what I'm getting at here. Or if you have any other questions about yarn or crochet or anything like that, please throw those in the comment section. I'm really glad that the videos are useful to you. So thank you for letting me know. All right. So, I'm going to kind of set all this stuff to the side, and if anyone has questions, I can pull it back out. But then today, to be perfectly honest, the traffic on the way home was really bad, and so I decided I was going to go to Hobby Lobby instead of trying to fight traffic and get home. And so I went to Hobby Lobby, I was wandering around a little bit, and really was noticing that Yarn Bee just has an enormous amount of new stuff out. So I've grabbed a few things. Hobby Lobby does not have yarn on sale this week. So a lot of times they have 30% off all yarn sale, and this week is not one of those weeks. So I just picked up a couple of things, and when they run the 30% off sale, I will go ahead and pick up a bunch more of the other yarns. I did notice, so a few weeks back, I opened a Lion brand yarn called Frothy, and that I was able to find at a Joann Fabric up by my sister's house that's got like everything. And I'm working on getting a cowl together to share with you guys made out of the Frothy. But I did notice if you can't get Frothy by you at like Joann Fabric, or you want to try something different, I did notice that Hobby Lobby had a yarn called Antoinette that looked very, very similar to Frothy. And I guess in my opinion, probably had a little bit better colors. So depending on the project. So the Frothy yarn is all in muted, very adult colors. The Antoinette yarn was in much brighter, more fun, probably more child or teenager focused colors. They had a lot of like neons and black like mixed together. There were some like rainbowy, unicorny colors. There was a really cool like blue-green mermaidy color. So depending on what you're looking for, the Frothy that I have is like burgundy and purple and blue. And so it's much more muted and more adult, I guess, in my opinion. So depending on what you're looking for, that's an option there. I'll probably grab some of the Antoinette when I pick up yarn on sale. The ones that I did pick up are Yarn Bee Rainbow Rhapsody in Teal of Fortune and Rainbow Rhapsody in Sapphire Blues. So that's these colors. And let's see. Teal of Fortune is teal to aqua to sort of a dark charcoaly gray, and then finally to a light gray. And then, what did I call this one? Sapphire Blues is dark navy to sort of a medium, I guess this is sort of the sapphire color here, sort of a medium blue, to light blue, to white in the center, sort of an ivory cream color. So these are the different options. This yarn is 198 grams or 7 ounces. It's 918 yards or 839 meters. It's a 60% cotton, 40% acrylic blend. They are saying it's a #1 super fine yarn, and they are recommending a D 3.25 millimeter crochet hook or a US 2.75 millimeter knitting needle. So this is a pretty fine yarn. It's also really high cotton content. So that's two very interesting things about it. I think the third interesting thing about it is that it looks just like a stranded cotton yarn, but is spun. So you don't have to worry about holding the 4 strands together. I've shown a handful of stranded cotton yarns like the It's a Wrap Rainbow or It's a Wrap Sprinkles, I think are what they're called. And so those are various yarns that they have 4 yarns like held together, and you'll have, so if it was this colorway, it would be 4 of navy blue, and then about here they would add in 1 medium blue, and about here they would change out one of the dark blues for another medium blue, and then that would continue. They would keep changing one at a time. And so this looks just like that, but these are twisted, so you don't have to hold those together. So they had a bunch of really fun, bright colors in these. I think these are sort of competing with the Sheep's Whirl yarn. Those have been really popular for like shawls and stuff, and they're pretty hard to get in the US. Webs, I think, carries them, but otherwise you have to import them from the Netherlands, which is where they're produced, and they're a little bit on the pricey side. By comparison, these are $8.99, and you can use a 40% off coupon if you're only getting one, and so that brings it down pretty quickly in price. So that's one option of new things out from Yarn Bee at Hobby Lobby. And then the other thing that I've got here is called Spiness, and this is the color teal. This is a 75% viscose, 25% polyester. So viscose is a product produced from, if I'm remembering correctly, viscose is produced typically from like bamboo or something like that. They use cellulose, they break it completely down, and then they extrude it like a synthetic fiber, but it's based in natural fibers. Depending on the technique that they use and the source, it becomes either viscose or rayon or modal, or there's one other one I'm trying to remember, tencel. So tencel, viscose, rayon, and modal, tencel, viscose, rayon, modal, are all basically the same thing, but they use different sources and they can use slightly different ways of breaking them down and then extruding them. But they're sort of the same concept. They're natural fibers that they break down and then extrude like synthetics. And then obviously 25% polyester, which is synthetic. This is, let's see, they're calling this a number 3 lightweight yarn. This is 99 grams. I don't know why it's not 100 grams. 350 yards or 320 meters. And they are recommending a US 5 3.75 millimeter knitting needle. And apparently they're not recommending that you crochet with it because there is no crochet hook recommendation on here for some reason. Yeah, there's a swatch on the back that shows knitting needles, and normally on Yarn Bee, there's a swatch that shows knitting needles and a swatch that shows a crochet hook. And it tells you what your gauge should be and all of that. And this one just does not have, this one just does not have a crochet swatch. So I would bet that a 3.75 millimeter crochet hook would probably be fine. That should put you in the ballpark of a G hook. 3.75 might be a EF hook. F or G hook should be about right for this, is basically what they're suggesting, going off of the knitting gauge. But it's pretty weird that they didn't suggest a crochet hook. I'm going to catch up real quick on comments. Stephanie's asking, when I mentioned the 100-gram hank, so when I was talking about this, I said it's probably destined to be a 100-gram shawl. Do I have a certain pattern that I like for variegated, speckled, or specific yarns? So I sort of, actually kind of tying into the comment from above, when I go to Ravelry, first thing I do is I hit patterns, and that takes you to sort of like a landing page where there's like a whole bunch of topics that you can pick. And one of them is shawls. And if you click on shawls and then you click like search within this category, you'll get all of the shawls that like Ravelry has, period. And then when you go over to the left-hand side of the like search menu, so you've got a blank search, you have all the shawls that are on Ravelry. When you go over to the left-hand side, you can start clicking boxes that will start taking away things as you refine your search. And I don't use any search terms. I just put in, so for this, I would go with fingering weight yarn. And so I'd click that. I'd probably also click light fingering because I don't know why those are even subcategories, but probably click both of those. Then I would probably, this is a 430 yard, 100 gram ball. I would pick, I think it's like between 400 and 600 yards. There's like a yardage range. I'd click that. And then I would start just searching through and looking for something that caught my eye. I usually sort patterns by new or by hot right now just to see what's popular. New just because a lot of times I check regularly, and so then I'll get the ones that have been posted most recently on top. But I'll sort by those and I'll start looking for shawls. And some shawls you can see are specifically designed to work with a gradient, or some are specifically designed to really show off like cables or something. And depending on what they design the shawl to go with, then you can sort of start to narrow down, like, this is going to be a variegated yarn. If there's a pattern that calls for like really, really intricate cabling, or like a crazy pattern where you really want to see all of the stitches, this is not the yarn I'm going to use. Those are really reserved for solids or gradients where you don't have like a lot of chaos going on. A really good gradient should be like solids, just sort of melting into each other, and you should still be able to see all of your stitch pattern, where this is going to really quickly get lost. Patterns that are good for variegated yarns have very simple stitches, usually not a lot of raised stitches where you want to see a lot of detail. I can pull a couple examples here. So this is a pattern that just has a lot of small stitches. Let me move some stuff out of the way here. A lot of small stitches, not a lot of crazy detail going on in the body of the shawl. Can you go top down on this real quick? But there's not a lot of like crazy detail going on in this shawl. It's just got kind of a nice edge on it, but this is perfect for a variegated yarn. It's not about the pattern. We're not trying to see cabling. We're not trying to see like intricate stitch patterns. It's just a lot of chains, and there's some V stitches in here. This shawl really needs to be reblocked. It's sort of collapsed in on itself a little bit, but this is a really good example of something to work with a variegated. This is one of Rachie Newen Designs patterns. I honestly could not tell you what pattern it is offhand. I might have it saved on my Ravelry profile that shows this yarn in that pattern. This one I worked up. So this one could have been worked in a variegated yarn. It's again a lot of chains and simple V stitches, and there's not a lot going on. But you might have lost some of the detailing here in the center, where you can see these, like, if I turn this and move it this way, in the center, there's sort of these, like, tree shapes, I guess. And you can see all of, like, the ribbing, or I guess not really ribbing, but, like, structure here. And if there was a lot of chaotic pattern going on instead of a pretty solid pattern, you might have lost some of that to the shawl. This one is also a Rachie Newen pattern. I think I've mentioned a couple of times that I tested patterns for her, so a lot of my shawls are her patterns. This one I think is called Kaylee. I'm trying to see if I've got one.
Do you mind? I can't hear you when you this way.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going through my bucket of shawls here so I can bring out some examples. This is a really good example of one that had to be done in a solid. And I guess I shouldn't say has to be, but really looks nice in a solid, because you've got these beautiful, like, standing stitches here. You've got, like, an open part and a solid part, and it's really about the stitches. This one truly focuses on the stitches. And if you worked this in a variegated yarn, you're going to lose something. One of the things you could do here is stripe this. So you could do solids on the post stitches. These are post stitches, and then variegated in here because this is not too intricate that it couldn't support a variegated. But other than that, I really wouldn't want this part done in a variegated yarn because it really would detract from the really beautiful standing post stitches there. So I hope that helps. It's sort of getting a feel for it. One of the things that you can do when you get on Ravelry and you find a pattern that you think might work with your yarn, I always click on the pattern and then go to projects. And hopefully there's been some people who've made projects and shared them, and they've got pictures, and you can see what yarn choices other people used. And that sort of can guide you on how things will look, because inevitably somebody will have worked this shawl up in like the craziest, most variegated colorway. And it might look perfectly fine, or it might look, in your opinion, terrible. Like, you just have to sort of know what you like and what you're going to wear. And then I guess the other thing is not all variegated yarns are equal. This yarn is going to work up where I'll unhank this yarn so you can see. But this yarn is going to work up. It's going to be a couple of stitches of like a black gray, 1 or 2 stitches of a green, 3 or 4 stitches of magenta, 1 or 2 again of blue-green, then 3 or 4 of like charcoal again, 1 or 2 stitches of green. And so it's going to be chunk of different colors, and they might pool as you work rows back and forth. They'll certainly pool to some degree if you work them in circles, like for a hat. So this yarn is going to work up much different than like a speckled yarn, where it's going to be primarily one color with just like hints of color here and there. And that can matter with a shawl pattern too. Like, some will lend themselves really well to speckles, but not to this pooling type of variegation. So, anyway, we're going to, okay, Maggie May says it looks like Hobby Twister. I assume we're talking about this yarn. I'm not familiar with Hobby Twister, but I will look it up, and, a lot of the yarn companies sort of piggyback off of each other and piggyback off of the trends, so I'm not surprised that it looks like another yarn. My husband's agreeing heavily with the assessment that it looks like Hobby Twister. Who makes Hobby Twister? We're gonna just pop a picture up there so everyone can kind of be on the same page here. If the streaming software cooperates.
You can keep talking.
All right, so I'm gonna kind of read through here. I'm having a hard time reading the next one. The top handle's in the way.
It says
On Ravelry, if I use a paid pattern but altered it a bit, will it to fit my style? If I tag the designer, will I get in trouble? Because... and then I can't read the end of it. Okay. Real quick, there's Hobby Twister, and yeah, it looks exactly the same. Pretty much to a T looks exactly like that. So, I'm not sure who makes Hobby Twister. Hobby is the company. So, yeah, it's clearly meant to compete directly with that yarn. I have noticed that about Hobby Lobby. The yarns that they sell have clear direct competition in most cases. But one of the things that I did notice is that they have tons of yarn that I don't know of a strong competitor. So, for example, they have the sugar wheel yarns. Those compete pretty obviously with the Karen cotton yarn. They have a yarn that looks just like Bernat blanket. They have yarn that looks just like Bernat velvet. But then they have a bunch of things that I just don't know who they're competing with. For example, the trying to remember. It's a what is their I love this yarn. I love this yarn sport. I have no idea what that's competing with. It's great that they have like a bunch of sport weight, or I love this yarn cotton in just bunches and bunches of colors, but I don't know of anybody who sells 15 different colors of sport weight yarn at the big box level. So, all right. Back to the comment about Ravelry. It's bumped up a little bit and I can read it now. If I tag the designer, will I get in trouble because their pattern is copyrighted? How do I tag? So most of the time, I guess there's two different things here, and I'm not quite sure how to take the question. If you go to Ravelry and you want to post a picture and you say that you use that, let me back up a second. I'm talking in circles here. Ravelry, you can go on there and you can post a project saying that you made the project using this pattern and you made these modifications, and most people put those in the notes. So, for example, if it wasn't going to fit you because it wasn't long enough or it was too wide or too narrow in a particular spot and you modified the pattern, you can say, here's my pattern. I based it off of such and such pattern, and then it will sort of tag the designer on Ravelry, and just then you that's just how it goes. People make modifications to patterns all the time. And what's helpful though for future people using it is that you note what modifications that you made. I think most designers tend to expect that if it's a clothing item that people are going to have to make modifications. Not every size small is going to fit every person who wears a small. There are people who are longer in the torso or who have wider or narrower arms, and they sort of expect you as a crafter to make those modifications. So that's one way I can take your question. The other question is if you just want to post it on Instagram and then tag the designer, I don't think that they would have any issue with you tagging it, even if you made modifications. Most designers should be able to see their design in your work. So Twine Twiddler said they, for example, turning a cardigan into a sweater. As long as you are not taking that pattern and then republishing it and tagging them as like, hey, this is a new pattern that I came up with and I based it off your pattern. I think that's really the only place that you would offend people, and get into, sort of dicey area. And even at that point, if you've made, I won't advocate for taking somebody else's pattern, modifying it a bit, and then reselling it as your own. But if you've changed something so much that it's now no longer the thing that it started off of, and you just took inspiration, that's sort of a different thing than they would my husband's putting in disclaimers because I'm getting into legally dicey territory here. But I guess my point is that if you're not trying to sell it, I don't think anybody is going to be upset about it. Ravelry is designed so that you can make things, specifically things that are copyrighted and paid patterns, and then you share them with your modifications. There's a spot in there for notes and telling people how you changed the pattern. If you go through any big sweater pattern, any big, really any pattern, if you go look at any, like Sophie's Universe was a huge pattern that was available, and people changed colors and they just stopped working after X amount of rounds and they turned it into a pillow or whatever they were doing with it. there's just hundreds and hundreds of variations. And I think that's kind of a cool thing about Ravelry is you can say, okay, well, this was supposed to be a cardigan and you were supposed to work it back and forth. And instead I worked it in the round and now it's a sweater. And you just put those notes in there and say, like, this is what I did. And this is how I think people like to see that. So I would not worry at all about offending anybody, or giving advice as to how to modify a paid pattern, because the fact is that you're not taking away from the designer who made the pattern. If somebody sees it and was like, well, I don't really want a cardigan, but I sort of wanted a sweater, and then they see yours, you may have helped sell a pattern for that designer because their pattern isn't what somebody wanted, but your project based on their pattern was what they wanted. So I guess that's sort of the way I see it. And I think most designers and most people on Ravelry would agree. So I'm kind of just flipping through. I don't think, just some thank yous. Wendy said that has a nice shine. I assume she's talking about the viscose sample because that's the shiniest one. Fell on the floor here. This one has a really nice shine to it. So based on what I know from work, viscose has a really nice shine. It's so soft and feels so nice, but it has a real problem with pilling. So I'm curious to see. I planned on turning this into maybe a pair of fingerless gloves or something like that. But fingerless gloves do have a tendency to get a lot of abrasion from just working with your hands. And this yarn might not be particularly well suited. It might end up being a 100-gram shawl or something instead. One of the things that I have noted in the past about Lion Brand offering just like tons and tons of yarn in all different weights, I think can probably be said of Yarn Bee as well. Yarn Bee is coming out with just boatloads of yarn in every weight category, every style. They have a real focus on getting natural fibers in there, it seems. These are, I think I said 60% cotton. These are 75% viscose. A bunch of the stuff that I have bought has a variety of cotton or wool or interesting natural fibers in there, trying to get away a little bit from using the synthetic fibers like acrylic and polyester and nylon. So I guess what I'm saying is all of the positive things that I've said about Lion Brand just releasing tons and tons of variety in yarn can probably be said of Yarn Bee as well. Like I mentioned, I was there primarily to grab Must Be Merino. And I did pick that up in 2 more colors. And for those of you who are Harry Potter fans, you'll recognize these as Gryffindor colors. I showed last week a scarf that I'm working on in Ravenclaw colors, in navy blue and silver, and so I need a Gryffindor scarf, and so I'll probably pick another stitch pattern and do some other style of striping. So if there's a particular stitch that you've been dying to see, I'd love to hear what that is, and maybe I can turn this into that stitch, because otherwise I just sort of go to my crochet stitch dictionaries and just browse until I find something that interests me. The Ravenclaw one is in Marguerite stitch, which had an immense amount of skew. So I don't know. I'm planning on just flipping through the stitch dictionary until I find something that interests me, and I'm gonna get that one made up. So anyway, that's really all I have to share with you guys tonight. If you guys have questions about anything you've seen here, now is a great time to throw those in the live chat. If you're catching the stream later after we're done, you can always throw comments in the comment section at the bottom of the video. If you need something more immediate, or you need sort of individual attention on just like a topic that I didn't stream on, but you just have a question about, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Experiments in Crafting. Please feel free to tag me in posts or direct message me, and I can get back to you if you have just specific questions about yarn or crochet or whatever topics are interesting. Twine Total is asking, would I be able to teach mosaic stitch? So a mosaic stitch, there's probably a specific one that people are calling mosaic stitches. I sort of learned mosaic as just working two colors sort of at the same time in like a pattern. So I'll have to look up and see if there's a specific mosaic stitch, but otherwise, doing the two color and switching back and forth is something I absolutely could do a video on. I'd have to think about what yarn I want to do. I don't necessarily want this to be a mosaic scarf, but I'm sure I have two solid colors that I can do a tutorial video on how to do mosaic stitching. Stephanie's suggesting a basket weave or a waffle stitch. That could be interesting for a scarf. My intent here is to stripe this somewhat like the movies show, kind of a nice heavy striped scarf. The intent for these are for a friend of mine's kids are sort of into Harry Potter and are going as Harry Potter characters for Halloween. So I want them to have the scarves, and then they can sort of hold on to those after that. But basket weave might work in stripes. I would have to just sort of see how that looks. And mosaic stitch, I absolutely can do a video on. I'll pick one of the mosaic stitch patterns and work on that. And then the skill set should translate no matter what specific pattern that you're actually working on. But yeah, I actually find that kind of fun. I've done a couple of mosaic hats and stuff, and they're pretty fun to work up once you get the hang of it. It usually ends up with yarn being a tangled mess because you switch back and forth a lot and they crisscross a lot. But other than that, it's a lot of fun as far as technique goes because they blend really nicely. So, but yeah, basket weave or waffle might work for these, and I can still stripe them. So that might end up being what I do with those. I guess I'm trying to think. I'm not totally sure what I'm going to stream on next week. So if anybody has a particular topic that you'd like to see the stream on, I know we talked a little bit about Ravelry. If there's particular usability issues that you guys have questions about there, I'd love to hear about those. Those are kind of fun topics. They're a little bit different live stream because we hook up my laptop and you can see my view. And I can show you how I go about doing doing a Ravelry search and stuff like that. I'm going to try, I think, this week and see if I can turn this fiber into anything. I learned a little bit more about drafting, which is where you pull the fibers and get them sort of aligned for spinning. And I was doing it not well. So I'm sure I still won't do it well, but I have a little bit of guidance now, and I'll see what I can do.
Did you want to show the frothy scarf or anything?
My husband's asking if I wanted to show the frothy scarf that I'm working on. I would, but I don't know where it's at right now. We traveled a whole lot this weekend. Like I said, we live in central Illinois, so we went to Wisconsin. Wisconsin Sheep and Wool is about level with Madison and Milwaukee and sort of dead between them. And so it didn't take us super long to get there, but it's about 3 hours there and 3 hours home. And then we went back up from where our families are from near the Chicago area. And so that's about 3 hours there and 3 hours home. And so it was a lot of traveling this weekend. And when we got home on Sunday, I sort of just took everything and dropped it where it fell. So I'm not totally sure what that scarf is, but I can show that off next week. That scarf actually might be done by next week, and maybe we'll be telling you about a video that's launching instead, which would be really nice. Couple of plans to get some stitch tutorials. Because we were traveling, we didn't really get anything filmed this weekend, so things like the beading tutorial and things like that are still kind of on hold, but all coming as soon as we can get them filmed. But yeah, so generally sometime during the live stream, I talk about if you're not a subscriber that you should, if you like what you're seeing, you should hit subscribe. If you are a subscriber and you're not getting notifications, the best thing I can suggest is that you click the little bell, and then instead of having personalized notifications, you get all notifications. That's a option in the drop-down menu. So you can click the little bell and get all the notifications. A bunch of people have told me that they have it set to all notifications and they're still not getting notifications. My best guess is that's just YouTube being YouTube. They just are not very good at getting you what you ask for. So, that's the best I can suggest is click the bell, and hopefully you'll get notifications when we're live and when there's new videos. I still don't know how the community tab works. I've been trying to post in there if I'm going to like miss a live stream or something like that. I also post on Instagram and Facebook. So, you can find me on both of those at Experiments in Crafting. And again, if you ever have questions or ideas, you want to share projects with me, I really, really love seeing things that you guys have made from stitch tutorials or blanket tutorials or anything like that. It's just really nice to see those, and people have been sharing those with me. So that's been a lot of fun, just seeing projects and chatting with people outside the streams. So it's been a lot of fun. But other than that, I think tonight might be sort of a short live stream. Actually, I have no idea what time it is. Maybe it's already been a long live stream. But,
57 minutes.
Yeah. So I don't have a whole lot else to talk about. Chat a little bit about the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool and a little bit about Hobby Lobby. I've got a whole bunch of side projects that I want to work on that I don't know if you guys have any interest in. I have a couple of necklaces and earrings that I want to put together. I picked up some just kind of cute little charms. I am not a jewelry maker by any means, but I sort of dabble around here and there. My husband's actually much more of the jewelry maker than I am. He's got a little bit more experience messing with ring settings and things like that. But if that's something of interest, I could film that instead of just doing it in my own spare time. I also mentioned a few weeks back that I have a American Girl doll that I need to repair. It is missing a leg, and I did a real quick look around, and I think I can fix it. So I'm going to do some doll surgery at some point. So if any of that is of interest to anybody, let me know, and I might just post the videos anyway. I suspect those are not going to get massive amounts of hits, so they might not be particularly searchable, but if you're subscribed, then you should get notifications when we post it. But yeah, so I don't know what sorts of hobbies or who has kids or anything like that in the stream, but one of the things that I really enjoyed was making American Girl and Bitty Baby clothing for dolls. I've modified a few patterns, and I have a few sort of my own patterns that I work off of. But I don't know. I always thought it was really fun just to make the little doll dresses. One of the nice things about making doll clothes is that you can use sort of crappy yarn, things that don't feel nice against the skin, things that are known for pilling really badly, like Karen's Simply Soft comes in a million colors, but it pills terrible. And it does not matter for doll clothes because dolls are not that rough on their clothes. And so even if they get beat up a little bit by getting carried around and stuff, they still don't pill like if a person was wearing it and like moving their arms and rubbing, and that's really how you get pills going. So you can use yarns that you wouldn't necessarily use for the same item on an actual child. But I don't know. I had fun doing things like that. So, yeah. So if there's, Stephanie said she's interested in seeing some other crafty stuff. If there's other interest, I might go ahead and I might throw a few videos. I know I've also talked about doing some sewing videos on my project bags. I usually make all of my own project bags. I've bought a couple recently that I've been using pretty heavily. I bought one that's got bees on it and it's lined really nicely. And then I've got a Harry Potter one that I bought just because it was really cool, limited edition fabric, from a designer that I like her project bags, so I bought that one as well. But for the most part, I make my own. I am not a master seamstress. I've made a few things, so bear with me if you're a really, really good seamstress or you do a whole lot of quilting. My sewing videos will not be on par with my crochet videos, I don't think, but I do well enough to get by, and my project bags have held up and they're kind of fun to make. So it'd be more of a learn with me type of video rather than a here's the expert opinion. So with all that being said, I think I'm going to wrap up. Hopefully we will get some time to record all of these videos and get some of these. A couple more comments coming in here. Christmas crochet sweater for cats. I actually made a whole bunch of dog sweaters for my mother-in-law. She's got some teeny tiny chihuahuas, and the one is actually small enough that it's really too small to buy dog clothes for. It's only like 3 pounds and kind of a long Beanie Baby sized dog. So, I made a custom sweater. It probably would fit a guinea pig. Actually a guinea pig might be bigger round than Ruger is. Like, he's got a big head, but his whole body is probably smaller than a guinea pig. But I've done, I guess all of that to say, I've done some crochet sweaters. I have some suggestions on where you could get some free ones, but yeah, I could maybe come up with some sort of fun Christmas sweater for a cat / small dog. They're actually pretty easy to make. So, that might actually be a really good opportunity to teach some mosaic crochet as well, because when you stitch in a pattern, I'm envisioning like a flat part that has like a Christmas tree or something like that, a 15-pound cat. My dog is about 15 pounds. That's a big cat. So, though we have a really little dog, she just has a lot of hair. But yeah. So yeah, maybe we'll try some pet stuff. I've got some Bernat blanket pet, though I suspect that might not be what I want to use. I also don't know if they sell Bernat blanket pet anymore. So, it might not be a super relevant thing to make it out of, but I'm sure I can come up with something and make a sweater out of that. So yeah, that's a good idea. I'll see. Where am I at? Oh yeah, Michael's in Canada now sells material. Would love to see project. Oh, okay. So yeah, the Michael's is selling fabric, I guess. I actually was in Walmart the other day, and Walmart, at least the one of the ones near me, has revamped their fabric section. Clearly their employees are tired of cutting fabric, and so what they did was they cut up and like packaged a bunch of cuts of fabric that are like the appropriate size for the type of fabric. So fleece, they've got cut into like 1.5 yard sections, because a common way of buying fleece is 1.5 or 2 yards to make blankets. So they've got that cut up into, I think, 1.5 yards. And then a bunch of like character fabrics and things like that they have in 1 yard bundles. And so they had a really good selection of fabrics pre-cut and packaged, and you can just like grab it off the shelf and check out like normal, and you don't have to page somebody or whatever to get somebody to come to the fabric counter at Walmart. So it was an interesting what do I want to say, revamping there. So
It's strange that they wouldn't sell fabric at the Michaels in Canada.
they don't sell fabric at the Michaels in the US.
I thought there was one that had that.
Joann and Hobby Lobby have fabric, but Michaels does not carry fabric. You can only get fabric online from Michaels.
Oh.
My husband was saying it's strange that they don't sell fabric at Michaels in Canada, but just reminding him that Michaels doesn't carry fabric here. So it's nice that they do have it there. I would really like some non-big box, non-quilting fabric stores in like around. There used to be a chain called Hancock Fabrics that was like just a little bit different. But the only one that I know of is a store that I recently found called Vogue Fabrics, and they had some like interesting stuff, but that's in Evanston. So it's a pretty far drive for me to get to. And I don't know that there are multiple anything like that. Quilting stores are nice, but the fabric's not quite what I want for project bags. It's just a little bit too nice, I guess, is really what I want to say. It tends to be kind of expensive and is just a higher quality than I need for project bags. But I don't know. I just feel like sometimes Joann Fabric, everything starts to get a little repetitive. So I don't know. Sometimes I just want to go somewhere else. And I've never been all that impressed with Hobby Lobby's selection in fabric. Occasionally I find something I really like there, but I don't know. I just want something else. I don't know what. Kind of scrolling through here. Joe says she's a quilter and made some drawstring bags and learned things not to do. Yeah, I made a whole lot of bad drawstring bags to start with, and then I finally got like exactly the thing I wanted figured out, and now I've got it really down to sort of a science of what I like, what particular pocket layout I like, how I run my drawstrings. I do a bag that is slightly different on the bottom, like a coordinating fabric, and then like the main fabric on top. You can toss me one of those, whatever one. There's empty ones down on the polka dot box on lower. There. That's an old one. Anything behind it. That's a zipper one. Those are good options. All right, so this is my standard drawstring bag. So it's got a main fabric, a coordinating fabric on the bottom. It has boxed corners so that it stands up. I'm going to throw a yarn in here to make it stand up. So it's got boxed corners so that it stands up really nice. You can flip the top down so that it'll act as a yarn bowl and just hold your yarn like that. It's got a pocket that has two like medium-sized pockets and then a couple of hook pockets, which are just big enough to like get your finger in. Or a hook. I always put two next to each other in case I ever decide to knit, so that there's, like, if I had circular needles, I could put them in next to each other. I've never had to use that feature, but occasionally I'll give them to somebody who knits instead of crochets. I guess there's 3 medium pockets. I kind of forgot about that. So I've got 1 big-ish pocket, 1 medium pocket, 1 smaller pocket, and then 2 hook pockets or needle pockets. But yeah, and then there's a 3rd fabric on the inside that makes the liner, and then I sew along here and hold my drawstring. So I really prefer drawstrings to zippers or anything like that. I've tried some zippers, and it is really too stressful to have yarn near zippers. It catches, it'll pull. So I made basically the same bag here and put a zipper in it. And I just really don't like my yarn near zippers. So, this yarn, I don't know, there's not a price on some of these, but some of these yarns are over $30, and I just really don't want to lose them to a zipper. So, one of the other things that I did on this bag was added this little loop, which doesn't seem important, but I can run a, I can hang it on a hook, and a bunch of mine are on the wall over there, hung on the little tabs. But I can also put a split ring, like a key ring, in here, and then put a clip on the end, and then you can clip it to whatever you're carrying around. A lot of times I'll clip it to like the outside of my backpack, or something like that if it's not going to fit, or clip them all together so that they sit nicely in a bigger bag. So, a lot of different design elements went into this, borrowed from other patterns and taken from ideas that I've seen at shows or things like that. And this is what makes up like my basic project bag. The other nice thing about this is that because I use the 2 coordinating fabrics, when I cut this, I get, as long as I plan it out properly, I get a piece here. So I guess there's a mirror image, or not a mirror image, but an opposite to this bag. There is a piece that has a big section of Care Bears, and it's right here. It'll be easier to explain. Because I plan it out and cut it right, I get a big section of Care Bears and a coordinating blue, and then a big section of blue and a coordinating Care Bears. And so I get sort of 2 bags out of 1 cut of fabric, which works out really nicely. And then what I do is I plan it out so that the pocket on each bag uses the same size strip of fabric as the bottom. And then, so the pockets, I get 1 pocket out of Care Bear fabric here and 1 pocket out of blue fabric. So you can see those are out of the same as the outside fabric. And then I use an equal amount of liner fabric in both of them. So the way I've got the numbers worked out, it works out really well if you've got fabric and just small pieces, that you can get multiple bags out of a small piece of fabric. So this fabric, I only had a very small amount of, and so I just tried to get as many bags out of it as I could. And one of the ways you can do that is by using it as a coordinating piece. Just kind of catching up here. A couple people saying that they'd like to see the project bag sewing video. Yeah, quilting fabric is high. I mentioned that it is pricey. It's worth it if what you want is a quilt that's going to last forever and be an heirloom and stuff like that. Same way I feel about expensive yarns. If I want to make a shawl that I'm going to keep for years and years, or hand or give away to somebody as a gift that they're going to keep for a long time, I feel like it's worth it. But if I'm just making project bags that are going to get beat up and they're just really for containing my yarn, I choose a different caliber of fabric.
George says that they like the tutorial on the fleece blankets that I don't think actually exists, or maybe watch the live stream that we took out.
Somebody said that they like the tutorial on the fleece blankets for babies. We've been debating on whether that video still exists or not. So, I know we streamed on it a couple of times, and I actually just haven't gone and searched to see if there's one still up. Oh, we did take it down?
I don't think there's a live... We did a live stream with it.
Yeah, we've done a live stream at least twice.
Both times there were technical problems.
Yeah, and I know we had a bunch of problems, and so we decided we were just not going to do it. I think we have a live stream that's good up right now. I don't know.
I think it's still...
We're going back and forth on it, but I just need to go through the channel and look and see.
We probably should do a video on it.
But yeah, we're gonna do I'm glad that you liked the fleece blanket tutorial. We are going to do a real video where we edit it down and make it a little bit more concise. It also is a little bit easier to edit out dead space. A lot of times in the live streams there's a little bit of dead space. I think there was when I was digging through fabrics and yarns and stuff like that. So thank you for the feedback on that. I'm really glad that you enjoyed it, and we will be trying to repeat that video so that we can sort of share that with everyone. I really love doing fleece blankets with a crochet edge. I think they look so nice, and they're such a cheap way to get a nice handcraft present without having to put a boatload of effort in. Stephanie's asking if I prefer this project bag to the one that I crocheted with the Karen Pantone yarn. Yes. I like the idea of a crocheted project bag. I really love these project bags. I worked pretty hard to get like exactly what I wanted out of a project bag, and these work perfectly for me. They hold... I can get 200 grams of yarn in there, and which is really about all I ever do, ever. So a 200 gram fingering weight shawl or like this 200 gram ball will fit in here. The entire project I can smash back in there. There's a place for my hook. There's a place for some stitch markers or a pair of tiny scissors. Actually, that's one of the other things that I've been picking up at Hobby Lobby. The Hobby Lobby by me has this like little dollar section that reminds me, anybody who grew up in the 90s, there was like, in like Walmart, there was like a little section of like little girls' cosmetics called bonbons. And they came in like little plastic tubs, and it was just like, they were all $1, and they were garbage nail polish and lip gloss and stuff. But they have like a section of sewing stuff that reminds me just of that. They're in like little plastic bins. They're all $1.99 or something like that. And it's like tiny scissors and a tiny pin cushion that looks like a lipstick, and some tiny sewing kits and all this like random stuff for $1.99. But the teeny tiny scissors are actually fantastic. I have 3 pairs. There's a pair in my car, there's a pair in my backpack, and there's a pair in my whatever project bag I'm working on actively. And I really, really like those. So those are worth the $1.99. But anyway, that's a total aside. Amish Nord just saying that they wanted to make a fleece blanket for their newest granddaughter. Yeah, I think they're a really good gift. They're a really good baby gift because they're super washable, and you don't have to worry about them getting stained or, unraveling or anything like that. I always think that they're a really good idea for kids' presents anyway, because kids change their mind about what they like so often that it's not worth your time to make a giant corner-to-corner Grafgan where you make a particular picture, and then by the time you get the thing done, that they don't even care about that character anymore. Really, Grafgans are better suited for adults who are really into some sort of like fandom or some sort of collectible that they have been into for a really long time, and so that they're going to like it for much longer than a kid's interest usually. So fleece you can usually get really cheap, and you can get it in every character, like that's popular right now, and you just put a quick edge on it and it's done in, 6 hours, and you can just give the present, not have to worry about any of that. So it works out for babies too, because you can match it to a nursery or whatever, and then it doesn't matter if things sort of change over time and they go to a different theme or something like that, because it wasn't a major investment in time or money generally, but it still looks really nice. People really appreciate them. So, yeah, so I guess the end result is that I have a whole lot of videos that I need to get together and produced for you guys so that we can start releasing them and I can deliver some of these videos you guys want to see. So that's my top goal, but as most of you know, I work full-time and we travel sometimes on the weekends, and so videos get pushed back. So
You're also sick.
yeah, I was sick for ever. I was sick in August, and then I got better, and then I got really sick a couple weeks ago, and I'm finally getting over that. So I can't record while I'm sick for a number of reasons, partly because I'm sick and I don't feel like recording, but also because I sound terrible or can't stop coughing long enough to actually like make any intelligible recordings. So with all of that being said, I think I'm going to wrap up for the evening. As always, you can message me on Facebook or Instagram at Experiments in Crafting. Feel free to tag me in posts if you make something from one of my video tutorials, or even if it's something that I suggested on stream and has nothing to do with me. I still like to see things. And then if you ever have questions about yarn or crochet, or you're stuck in a place on a pattern and you think I can help, feel free to direct message me on either of those platforms and I'll try and get back to you as fast as I can. If you like this video, hit like and please subscribe. And all you need to do is click the little bell and change it from personalized to all if you're not getting enough notifications. Hopefully YouTube will eventually work out their bugs and start sending you all the notifications so that you know when we're live and when we release new videos. We've been doing pretty good about live streaming just after 8 o'clock on Tuesday nights. Again, sort of barring illness and my birthday. We've been pretty consistently streaming on Tuesday nights. So hopefully we will see you back here next week, Tuesday, about 8 o'clock Central Time. And otherwise, have a great week and see you next week. Good night. Bye.